Welcome back to In Business. Are you in the middle or contemplating a separation or divorce? It's agonizing and distracting and can be extremely costly. To help us continue our discussion on how to lose your spouse and keep your business is family law experts Andrew Feldstein and Mary Tersigni. We were talking about some corporate issues. How do you start to value the business now? Because we just started talking about some public companies, and that triggered my my thoughts to, well, now we might have some stock options, which haven't been realized yet. So Mary, how do you value the business? How do you put all this stuff together?
Well, to value a business, we obviously try and get experts on board as well. As lawyers, we need help of experts who do business valuation. So anytime there is a business involved, we always recommend to our clients that we get a business valuator who's trained to know what to look for and how to value it properly.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, do you ever find a situation where the spouse just says, what you're asking me to pay, I just cannot afford to pay. So here, why don't you just take the business and I'll go find a job somewhere else?
I've seen that happen a number of times, and usually it's done for drama. But the reality of it is, if you're self-employed, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. The child support guidelines make it very clear that you have to maximize your income. So if you're self-employed and you're making $250,000 a year based on the guideline analysis, even if you don't agree with it, mm-hmm. and you say you take the business to somebody who has no knowledge about the business and won't make it, the problem is when you go get that job and make $50,000 a year, the court will say you're intentionally underemployed and impute your income right back to the $250,000 you were making.
Really? Wow. That doesn't seem fair. Mary, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. If you can give us, because I know it's a graduated scale now as far as child support, anyways. Mm-hmm. Can you give us the levels that that it happens at? I forget what the top end was, 75,000 or 100. I don't even know what it is anymore. What are the levels of child support?
Well, child support, there's certain levels, but really it's based on what your exact income is and mm-hmm. how many children it is that you're paying for support. So the tables are very detailed, right down to thousands
right.
of dollars per year.
Right.
At this point, when we look at it, there's a cap, if you will, at 150,000, and that's just at the point at which we start to see, do the table amounts actually reflect how much should be paid? Mm-hmm. Most of the time, people say, yeah, they do. At other points, we say maybe it's not appropriate at that point, and we start to look at if there's figures that should be added on top of that.
Now we hear some really, and I say they're goofy numbers because they're goofy numbers in my mind. I just can't imagine, paying this amount of child support and spousal support. But we hear numbers of, $50,000 a month, $60,000 a month. Is there any maximum, Andrew, that the courts will put on child support and spousal support, or really is it based on income?
There isn't a maximum. It is based on income. What Mary said is correct, that at $150,000 under the guidelines, you can argue the table amount isn't appropriate. But I've read cases where people are earning $5 million a year, and the court has said, we're staying with the guidelines. Mm-hmm. You need to get to a really, really incredibly high income figure before a court is going to depart from the guideline amount. Mm-hmm. So there's very few people that hit that threshold. Even if you're right. making $2 million or $3 million a year, you're going to be paying what may seem like a ridiculous sum of child support.
And at $150,000, what is the maximum somebody's going to pay at that amount?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Okay. We will usually use software in order to do the calculations of child and spousal support for us. And as Mary said, it depends on the number of children you have.
Right.
The more children you have, the more you pay.
Is it a multiple, or do you get a quantity discount?
You get a quantity discount. There's economies of scale at play.
Perfect.
But you may not get the discount if they're from two different parents.
Oh, okay. Now we really get into the complicated, we have to draw a family tree. Let's go to spousal support then, Mary. What are the rules around spousal support?
Spousal support is based on the spousal support advisory guidelines. They don't work quite the same as the child support guidelines in that we can't just open a book and point to the figure that you're making. Mm-hmm. Spousal support under the advisory guidelines, it looks at what your spouse makes and also what you make, how long you've been married, if there's children involved in the marriage. So it takes in a whole factor of considerations. And when we do these calculations, the software gives us a range that we can really start to negotiate within. So there's really not anything that we can say, being put on the spot, how the caps work.
But Andrew, you talked about drama before. How many of these cases actually go to court, percentage-wise, of the cases that you would handle? Is it 5%, 10%? You know, I know the person will come in and say, "That's it. I'm not paying anything to anyone," and they start pounding the desk, and I'm sure after 2 or 3 months and a few invoices from your office, people start to settle down a little bit. What percentage go to court?
Well, I think the question that people say go to court really should be thought of more from how many go to trial.
Go to trial, yes. Trials,
because
yes.
trial and court are
Because you
very
could be
different.
in court a number of times before you go to trial.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and a lot of cases go to court. Very few go to trial. I would roughly say, as an estimate, you're looking about 1% of cases go to trial, and unless you're in the financial elite or you're on legal aid, you cannot afford to go to trial. It will leave the family with financial Armageddon.
Right.
The winner may get their costs back from the loser, but the loser may pay for their lawyer and the other side's lawyer.
Yes.
So in some cases, you're rolling the dice with all or a significant portion of your net worth. And to me, and for most people, that's too much. And never mind what it does to the family, because it's an horrific thing for a family to go through.
And that's another part to it, is that I see so many people go through this, and you see people use the kids as pawns when they're negotiating their settlements, and that's just totally unfair. What's the current responsibility of the legal profession now? I mean, I know years ago it was, all right, we're just going to sue everybody, and we're going to go to trial, and we're taking this right to the nth degree. Mary, when someone comes in and they've got an issue and they're obviously upset, this is a very traumatic time in their lives. Is your first recommendation to try and settle this thing? Just settle it right now. The sooner you can settle it, the better.
Well, we always do remind our clients that this is going to be, it could be very financially straining on the whole family. So obviously the sooner that you can come to a resolution, the better it's going to be for everyone. We do have a responsibility as lawyers to look at different alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that can be used before having to go to court. Unfortunately, there are some situations where people just can't agree, and they have to go to court to get a court's opinion on how to move forward. But we do look at things like mediation, perhaps arbitration, collaborative family law, simple negotiations. These are all things that we can use, and we do recommend and provide to our clients as options.
How do you decide who's a good candidate for alternative dispute resolution or mediation, arbitration? Andrew, how do you make that decision?
Well, for me, it's quite simple. It also depends on the court system you're in. We practice in Toronto, we practice in Peel Region, we practice in Newmarket, which is York Region, and different courts have different resources. If I have a case that's in Toronto, I can get a court date typically within 2 months, and a judge will have 4 or 5 items on their docket and have a lot of time for me. If I get a court case in Peel Region, it can take several months to get that same date. Same thing in York Region and Newmarket. So in places where the wait and the delays are much more significant, and the judges, even when they see you, despite their best efforts, may only have a half an hour or 45 minutes to help you, I'm more inclined to want to go down the alternative dispute resolution process, even if I don't think it's a perfect case for it, because I can get people to resolution faster and more efficient, rather than coming to court with me and sitting for 5 hours to see a judge.
Mary, one of the things that people will always want to know, what funds are protected from all of this? Is there any money that you receive that's completely protected from spousal grab?
From spousal support, any funds that you receive as an income are considered to be funds that should be used for the
How about
purpose of calculating.
inheritances and things like that?
So when people get inheritances, or for instance personal injury settlements, large gifts, those things are considered to be protected for the purposes of when we're trying to figure out equalization and determining the division of assets in that regard. Obviously, you need to have proof and backup documentation to show where these funds are coming from,
Right.
in order to be able to have them be protected.
Excellent. Thank you both for coming back in, and we had the audio all working perfectly tonight so everybody could hear you. Thanks very much, Andrew. Thanks, Mary, for coming in.